welcome back here to Harvest Church here on YouTube. Thanks so much for checking us out. If you have not yet, we would love for you to click that subscribe button so that you can follow us when we release content. We do that every single week, and we would love for you to follow along. If this is your first time watching, we're so thankful. If you are coming back, we are also very thankful. Harvest Church exists so that all people may know Jesus and grow with Him. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram, harvest.247. We'd love for you to like and follow those pages. And we also have a podcast called Behind the Harvest Podcast. And you can go on there. We've got a lot of stuff on the end time. So, with everything going on in the Middle East, if you want to know a little bit more about that, you can check that out. You can do it on Google Play. You can also do it on Apple Podcasts. And we have been going through a series called More to the Story. And the whole premise of it is that as a church plant, we have just come through our first year, and we are trying to kind of tell people what we're for. If you watched last week's sermon, we're trying to tell people what we're for. What are our core values? What is our mission? Why we do things the way we do them? Why we don't do certain things that maybe other churches do? All those types of things. And so we're going to finish that series up today with a sermon entitled Mission Trumps. Now, I don't do a ton of travel, but when I do travel, I like to simply tell the most important thing to the most important people before I leave. And so if I'm going all by myself, I'll hug my wife, Sarah, and kiss her, and hug our boys and kiss them and say, hey, I love you. I can't wait to see you. You know what? And when I get back and all that kind of thing. And I want to tell them the most important thing before I leave, because what happens if I don't come back? Like, I want to leave them with like one last impression where they know exactly how I feel about them, so that if I don't come back, they're like, man, but Daddy loved us. My husband loved me because he told me the most important thing before he left. Of course, if Sarah and I go on a journey, we do that with our boys. And you probably have done the same thing. I mean, if you've traveled for work and you're going to be gone for a week, and you go into the airport or something like that, and you leave and you give big hugs and kisses, say, I love you. I can't wait to see you when I get back. But you want to tell the most important thing to the most important people before you leave. Maybe you have a family reunion and you've been looking forward to it, and you're about to leave the family reunion. You're going back home, and you're not going to see them again for maybe a year or 2 years, maybe 5 years. And you want to tell the most important thing to the most important people before you leave. Maybe you have dinner or coffee with a good friend, and they're in town, or they're passing through, or you haven't been able to get together for a while. And just before you leave, you tell them the most important thing, because they're the most important relationship before you leave, in case what? You never see them again. Well, we're not the only ones that do that. As a matter of fact, Jesus did the exact same thing. Before Jesus ascended, He gathered the most important group of people around Him. There were some more folks outside of that inner circle. And what He did is He told them the most important thing before He left, because here's the deal. Jesus wanted the church to know, and the people that He had spent the last 3 years ago with, what were the most important things on His heart? What were the most important things that they could be doing until He came back? And of course, 2,000 years later, we're still waiting on Jesus to come back. But He left us with the most important thing so that the church knew what it was supposed to be doing. So this is what He says in Matthew 28 and 16 through 20. He says this, He says, or it starts like this. Now the 11 disciples went to Galilee, to the mountain to which Jesus had directed them. And when they saw Him, they worshiped Him, but some doubted. So Jesus was on the cross, rose from the dead, and so some are still doubting that. And Jesus came and said to them, and I think this is a very important statement, how He begins this message. He says, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. And then, verse 20, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you, and behold, I am with you always to the end of the age. So before Jesus ascends and says, hey, listen, you're going to be my witnesses to the ends of the earth, He's saying to them, look, guys, I'm about to leave. And over the last 3 years that I've spent with you, I have trained and equipped you to do something. And the thing that I've trained and equipped you to do is the thing that I want you to be about. It's the thing that I want it to be the most important thing that you do out of anything else. And so he starts and he says in verse 18, I have all the authority. Meaning God the Father has given me all the authority to speak on this topic. I have all the authority in heaven. I have all the authority on earth. And so he starts very, very like just out of the gate, like, look, nobody else is the expert on this. Nobody else has a voice on this. Nobody else is coming in and telling you what you should and should not do. I am the one that has the authority. I am the one that gets to chart the course. I am the leader, and I'm the one that gets to say what's the most important thing that the church needs to do after I'm gone. And he says, go. Now, a lot of times we think about go like sending, and that's a good thing. Like we love to send missionaries, we love to send teams, that's all good. But it's actually translated in your going. So when Jesus is talking, the translation is while you're going, in your going, meaning as you're living out your daily life, make disciples. So it's this call to say, I'm not asking you to do anything on top of what you're already doing. I'm just asking you that while you're living your life, while you're going to work, while you're taking walks in the neighborhood, when you take your kids to ball practice, when you're going to the grocery store, when you're going on vacations, as you're going in your social networks, make disciples. Now, here's what we know. What we know that has been charted over 1,000 years in multiple cultures is that the majority of people, not all people, the majority of people, like 57% to 60% of people come to know Jesus for the first time through what we would call social networks, meaning the people that you interact with on a day in and day out basis. The barista you see 2 to 3 times a week. The local restaurant owner that you frequently visit when you get takeout or you go for pizza or you go out for dinner. The people that are on your baseball and football and soccer teams. The people in your schools, the people that work in the schools, the people in the grocery store, the person that checks you out at the grocery store, the person in your local pharmacy, your doctor, like social networks, the people, your neighbors in your neighborhood, and your immediate family or family members that you know. That the majority of people come to know Jesus through those social networks. So when Jesus says, I've got all the authority, and now as you're going, as you're living out your daily life, go and make disciples. I know a pastor down in Myrtle Beach area, and he has trained and equipped his people to say, we no longer go to the grocery store for groceries. We go to the grocery store to see if there's anybody that God would lead us to share the gospel. And while we're there, we'll get milk and we'll get chips and we'll get the things that we need. And so it's this different way of thinking about how we go and we reach people for Jesus. And what Jesus is saying here is that as you're living your life, go and make disciples. What does that mean, making disciples? Making disciples means that you're sharing either your story or God's story, and you're bringing people who were once lost, who did not have a relationship with Jesus, into having a relationship with Jesus. That's what that means. It says, go and make disciples. Go and share the gospel. Go and share your story and take people who were previously not a follower of Jesus, not a believer of Jesus, and make them a believer and a follower of Jesus. I had this conversation with a guy one time, and he said, you really don't share the gospel at church, and so what am I supposed to do? If I have someone who's not a believer and I bring them to church and you don't share the gospel, how are they supposed to receive Christ? And I looked at them and I said, well, I do share the gospel. However, you can also share the gospel. And actually, you're going to have a better time or an easier time to get them to receive Christ than I am, because you have relational capital with them. So when we talk about as you're going, making disciples, we're talking about leveraging our relationships, leveraging the relational capital we have with the people that we see most often, and being able to communicate the message of the gospel, not only in word, but also in how we live our life. And then he says, teach them all that I've commanded you. Some people say, he said in this translation, it's to observe. For some, it's to obey all that I've commanded you. So there's a second part of the process of the great mission that Jesus has us on. Take and make disciples. Bring people from being lost to now being found. Bring people from not having a relationship with Jesus into having a relationship with Jesus. And now we have a second part. They are to grow. We're to teach them to observe. We are to teach them to obey everything that Jesus has taught us to do. So when we see that, the great mission, and that's what I like to call it, begins with salvation and ends with the growth. That there's actually two parts of the mission that Jesus gives us: to make new believers and then grow new believers into mature believers. Make new believers and take believers and grow them into maturity. And so that's where we get our mission statement: so that all people may know Jesus, right? Make disciples and grow with him. And that's the teach them to obey, or teach them to observe all that I've commanded you. So when we talk about that, there's two kind of big theological words, and we're just going to kind of skim the surface here, okay, on these two words. The first one is justification. Justification is the thing that happens when someone receives Christ. They are justified to God through Jesus Christ. Meaning it is Christ who justifies them, not any works that they do, not how much they give, not how much they serve, not that they don't cuss, or not that, none of that stuff. It's that Jesus Christ himself, and this is what it means: being declared or pronounced legally righteous. And so biblically speaking, being justified deals with a person being declared righteous before God by their faith in Jesus Christ. That is based on their belief, and it's their faith in Jesus that justifies them. So that is the knowing part. The growing part is a big theological word called sanctification, or to sanctify something is to set apart for special use. It's to make them holy. So Jesus loves you for who you are and where you're at, but he loves you enough not to let you stay there. So discipleship is the process of incorporating both. It's taking someone who didn't have a previous relationship with Jesus into having a relationship with Jesus, and then teaching them to obey and observe all that Jesus commanded us to do. And so that's the mission. That's the most important thing that Jesus told to the most important people before he left. He said, listen, essentially, and this is our statement, as you're going about, see that all people know me and grow with me. See that all people come into a relationship with me and grow with me. And you're to do that and to the ends of the earth. You're to do that to the ends of the earth geographically, and you're to do that to the ends of the earth in a time sense, meaning when the earth is no more, until Jesus comes back, until the earth is no more, we are to do that as believers. And so Jesus told us the most important thing, and he told it to the most important people before he left. And that message is still prominent today, which is why the mission trumps. The mission of the church, the mission that Jesus gave us, trumps everything else that we could do. It trumps our personal preferences. It trumps what we used to do. It trumps methodology. It trumps whatever we got to do so that all people may know Jesus and grow with him is what we have to do for each and every generation, so that we see new believers come to Christ and more people grow with him. So, you want to know what the Great Mission is? This is the way we say it: so that all people may know Jesus and grow with him. And we would love for you to partner with us to continue to do that. You can go to harvest247.org, figure out more ways to get involved, whether that's to give or whether that's to serve. We'd love for you to check it out. And of course, Harvest.247 on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. We'd love for you to follow us there. God bless you.